She was a spy for 8 years, without anyone suspecting a thing. Jennifer Miller typed on her laptop with steady fingers, but her heart raced unevenly. 8 years working at that company, 8 years building a perfect lie, and now everything could come crashing down in a matter of minutes. Her colleagues chatted in the background about quarterly results, unaware that the financial director they so admired had created a completely false identity. The secretary, Mrs. Peterson, approached her desk with a strange expression, holding a yellowed folder. Jennifer pretended to focus entirely on the screen, but her muscles tensed. Mrs. Peterson had worked there for over 30 years and knew every secret of that company like no one else. "Jennifer, I need to speak with you privately," the gray-haired woman said, lowering her voice. "Of course, Mrs. Peterson. What's wrong?" "It's about these old documents I found in the archives. I think you should take a look." Jennifer felt cold sweat trickle down her back. The day she had long feared had arrived. After so many years living as Jennifer Miller, perhaps it was time to face the truth about who she really was. Catherine Wilson, the daughter Richard Thompson never knew existed. It all began when her mother, Emily, died alone in a hospital bed in Pittsburgh, whispering the name of the man who had abandoned her while pregnant. Richard Thompson was now the owner of Thompson Financial, one of the largest companies in upstate New York. The same man who had promised to marry her mother and then vanished when he learned of the pregnancy. Catherine was only 22 when she decided to take justice into her own hands, not through violent revenge, but something subtler. She wanted to meet the man who had shattered her mother's life, to discover if he had any conscience, any remorse, and most of all, she wanted to see if he was capable of truly loving someone. She spent her meager savings changing her appearance, crafted a fake biography with convincing documents, and applied for a junior financial analyst position at his company. To her surprise, she was hired immediately. Richard Thompson hadn't even been part of the initial selection process. For the first few years, Catherine worked quietly, observing everything. Richard was a 62-year-old man, gray-haired, always impeccably dressed, married to Amanda, a woman 20 years his junior, and father to Michael, his only legitimate 28-year-old son. With each promotion she earned, Catherine drew closer to her goal. Her dedication was genuine. She discovered she had a natural talent for numbers and business strategy. But what truly motivated her was the chance to study the father she had never known. Richard was respected by his employees, fair in business, generous with social causes. This deeply confused Catherine. How could a man who seemed so upright have abandoned a pregnant woman? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Little by little, Catherine uncovered details about Richard's past. Mrs. Peterson, who had worked at the company since she was young, sometimes reminisced about the old days. Catherine learned to ask casual questions, always masking her true curiosity. "Has Mr. Thompson always been so dedicated to his work?" she once asked, feigning professional interest. "Oh dear, he changed a lot after taking over his father's company. He was younger back then, more, how should I say, impulsive. But life teaches us, doesn't it?" "Did he have any other relationships before marrying Mrs. Amanda?" Mrs. Peterson hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "There was a girl many years ago, Emily, if I remember correctly. But it was a complicated time. His father, God rest his soul, was very strict about such things." Catherine's heart raced when she heard her mother's name mentioned, but she kept her expression neutral. What a shame it didn't work out, huh? That's life. Sometimes fate plays tricks on us. The family put on a lot of pressure. Back then things were different, you know. Social class mattered more. Those words echoed in Catherine's mind for days. Had Richard been forced to abandon her mother, or was it just a convenient excuse? Months passed and Catherine became a model employee. Her efficiency caught the attention of the board, including Richard's. During monthly meetings, she studied his every gesture, every expression, searching for signs of remorse or humanity. Richard treated everyone with respect, but there was a sadness in his eyes she couldn't decipher. During a presentation about new investments, he made a remark that left her intrigued. We need to be responsible with our decisions. Every choice we make affects not just us, but people we may never even imagine. Catherine wondered if he was referring to something specific. Michael, Richard's son, also worked at the company. He was charming, intelligent, and showed growing interest in Catherine. It made her deeply uncomfortable, but she had to keep up appearances. "Jennifer, how about dinner sometime?" Michael suggested after a meeting. "Thank you, Michael, but I've been really focused on work lately. Come on, you can't live on spreadsheets alone. One dinner won't hurt." Catherine invented increasingly elaborate excuses to avoid his invitations, including a fictional engagement to a man supposedly living in another state. The situation grew more complicated when Richard started taking greater interest in her professional performance. He called her in for strategic discussions, asked her opinion on important decisions. Being so close to him was emotionally devastating. During one such conversation, Richard remarked, "You remind me of someone, Jennifer. I can't quite place it, but there's something familiar about you." Catherine felt her blood run cold. "Must be coincidence, Mr. Thompson. They say everyone has a doppelganger out there." "Perhaps. Do you have family in the area?" "No, sir. I'm from Massachusetts. Small family, just me and my mother. Actually, she passed away last year." She saw a shadow cross Richard's eyes when she mentioned losing her mother. "I'm sorry for your loss. Losing one's mother, it leaves a mark forever." "You lost yours too?" "Yes, many years ago. But before that, I lost other important people. Sometimes our choices—" He stopped mid-sentence, as if he'd said too much. Catherine wanted to press further, ask more questions, but knew it would be too risky. Years passed and Catherine became the financial director. Her proximity to Richard increased, as did her inner turmoil. The man she expected to hate proved complex, tormented by regrets she couldn't fully understand. Amanda, Richard's wife, had always been polite but distant with Catherine. Lately, however, she seemed to be watching her more closely. "Jennifer, how long have you worked here again?" she asked during a company party. 8 years, Mrs. Peterson." "And you never married? A beautiful, intelligent woman like you. Serious relationships take time, and I've always prioritized my career." "I see. You know, sometimes I get the feeling I saw you somewhere before you worked here." Catherine's heart pounded, but she kept her tone casual. "Impossible, Mrs. Peterson. I worked in Boston before coming here." But Amanda didn't seem convinced. It was during an internal audit that everything began to unravel. Catherine was reviewing old documents when she found records of payments Richard had made decades earlier. One name stood out: Emily Wilson. "Your mother." With trembling hands, she dug deeper. The payments were monthly, substantial, and lasted nearly 2 years. Then they stopped abruptly. Catherine discreetly confronted Mrs. Peterson. "Mrs. Peterson, do you remember payments to someone named Emily Wilson in the 90s? Mrs. Peterson's expression changed instantly. "How do you know about that?" "I found them in the files during the audit. Is something irregular?" "No, it's not irregular. It was a personal matter for Mr. Richard. He tried to help someone special to him, but she refused the money after a while." "Refused? Why?" "Pride, my dear. Sometimes pride keeps us from accepting help, even when we need it." Catherine left that conversation with her mind in turmoil. Her mother had never mentioned that Richard tried to help them. On the contrary, she always said he abandoned them completely. That night, Catherine went through her mother's belongings that she had kept. She found old letters she'd never read, hidden in a secret drawer. Letters from Richard to her mother, begging her to accept financial help, declaring eternal love, promising to find a way for them to be together. Tears streamed down Catherine's face as she read the last letter. "Emily, my heart, I know you're angry with me. I know my weaknesses brought us here, but please at least accept this help. Our daughter deserves every opportunity I can provide, even if I can't be present. Don't let pride keep her from a better life. I love you more than life itself, and I always will. Richard." Catherine realized she had judged Richard based solely on her mother's version. The truth was more complex, more painful for everyone involved. The next day, Richard seemed more downcast than usual. During a meeting, he felt unwell and was taken to the hospital. Catherine, as his closest employee, went with him. At the hospital, while waiting for the tests, Richard murmured, "Jennifer, if anything happens to me, there are things I need to settle, mistakes from the past that haunt me. You'll be fine. You don't need to think about that now." "No, I need to speak. Many years ago, I loved a woman named Emily. I was young, cowardly. I let family pressure influence me. I abandoned the woman I loved when she needed me most." Catherine held her breath. "She was pregnant, Jennifer. I had a daughter I never knew. I tried to help them later, but Emily refused any contact. I don't blame her. I was a coward." Tears rolled down Richard's eyes. "Sometimes I wonder what my daughter would be like today, if she'd look like me, if she'd have her mother's eyes, if she'd forgive me, if she knew I never stopped thinking about them." Catherine was shattered inside but couldn't reveal anything at that moment. "Maybe she'd understand that people make mistakes when they're young," she whispered. "Do you think so? I hope so. I hope she's had a good life despite me." The tests showed Richard had only experienced a stress-induced high blood pressure episode, but that conversation changed everything for Catherine. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Back at the office, Catherine couldn't focus. Mrs. Peterson watched her with growing concern. "Are you all right, dear? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Mrs. Peterson, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Do you think some lies can be justified?" Mrs. Peterson studied Catherine's face for a long moment. "It depends on the reason for the lie, my dear. Sometimes we lie to protect, sometimes to protect ourselves. But every lie has an expiration date. And what if the truth could hurt more people? Then you need to decide what's more important, your peace of mind or the well-being of others." That night, Catherine made a decision. She called her maternal grandmother, the only family she had left. "Grandma, I need to know the truth about my mother and Richard Thompson." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Catherine, why are you digging this up now?" "Because I need to understand what really happened." Her grandmother sighed deeply. "Your mother was too proud for her own good. Richard did try to take responsibility, yes. He sent money, letters, wanted to find a way for them to be together. But your mother and I thought he was just trying to buy our silence. And he wasn't. Maybe not. He was young, pressured by his wealthy family. By the time he tried to make things right, it was too late. Your mother had built a wall of pride so high she couldn't see past it. Why didn't you ever tell me this before?" "Because your mother made me promise I never would. She wanted you to grow up without fantasies about a father who abandoned you." Catherine hung up, more confused than ever. Now she had to decide what to do with all this information. The following days were tense. Amanda seemed increasingly suspicious, asking questions about Catherine's past. Michael kept insisting on dinner invitations, and Richard, unaware of their connection, was trusting her more and more professionally. During a meeting about company expansion, Catherine suggested creating a support program for single mothers in the area. "That's an interesting idea, Jennifer. But why single mothers specifically?" Richard asked. "Because they face unique challenges. Often abandoned by their partners, they have to raise children alone. Corporate support could make a real difference in the community." Richard fell silent for a long moment, clearly moved by the suggestion. "Let's develop this proposal. You can take charge of the project." Amanda watched everything with wary eyes. It was while working on this project that Catherine began questioning her true motives. Was she really seeking justice or revenge? And more importantly, did Richard deserve forgiveness? The answer came unexpectedly. During a visit to a shelter for single mothers, Catherine met Deborah, a 50-year-old woman who had raised 3 children alone. "You know what the hardest part was?" Deborah said. "It wasn't the lack of money or the sleepless nights. It was the hatred I felt for their father. That hatred was eating me alive." "And how did you move past it?" "By forgiving. Not for him, but for me. Forgiveness frees the one who forgives, not the one who's forgiven. Those words echoed in Catherine's mind for days. Meanwhile, Amanda had hired a private investigator to dig into Catherine's past. The report arrived on a Friday afternoon. Amanda read the documents with growing shock. Jennifer Miller didn't exist before 8 years ago. There were no records of her prior life, questionable academic credentials, references that didn't check out. On Monday, Amanda confronted Richard. "Darling, we need to talk about Jennifer Miller." "What about her?" "She's not who she claims to be. Look at this." Richard read the report with an increasingly grave expression. "There must be an explanation. Jennifer is an honest person." "Richard, she's been lying to you for 8 years. She could be an industrial spy, a con artist, anything. I'll speak to her personally before jumping to conclusions." But Amanda had other plans. She decided to confront Catherine directly. On Tuesday, Amanda showed up at Catherine's office with the report in hand. "Jennifer Miller. Or should I call you by your real name?" Catherine felt her world crumbling. "Mrs. Peterson, I can explain. Explain 8 years of lies. Explain fake documents. You're a complete fraud." "It's not what you're thinking." "Then tell me, who are you really?" Catherine took a deep breath. The moment of truth had come. "My real name is Catherine Wilson." Amanda's face paled. "Wilson? Like Emily Wilson?" "She was my mother." Amanda leaned on the table, clearly shocked. "You're Richard's daughter." "I am. That's why you're here. That's why these lies." "Yes. I wanted to meet the man who abandoned my mother." Amanda stayed silent for a few minutes, processing the information. "Richard doesn't know, does he?" "No." "And what do you plan to do now?" "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore." To Catherine's surprise, Amanda sat down, and her expression shifted from anger to something more complex. "You know, Catherine, Richard never got over Emily. Even married to me, there's a sadness in him I could never heal. Why are you telling me this? Because maybe it's time for him to face his ghosts, and you need to decide whether you want to destroy or save your family." That afternoon, Amanda had a long talk with Michael, revealing the truth about Catherine. His reaction was initial shock, followed by a strange joy. "So, I have a real sister," he said. "I always wanted siblings." "Michael, this is more complicated than that. Mum, you're overcomplicating it. Dad made a mistake when he was young. Catherine is here now. We can fix this." The simplicity of Michael's view contrasted with the emotional complexity of the situation. Meanwhile, Mrs. Peterson had reached her own conclusions. 8 years watching Catherine, 8 years noticing little familiar mannerisms, the way she tilted her head when thinking, just like Richard. On Thursday, she sought Catherine out. "My dear, how long have you known?" Catherine looked at the grey-haired woman, realizing it was useless to keep lying. "From the beginning, Mrs. Peterson." "And Richard?" "He knows nothing. He deserves the truth." "Are you going to tell him?" "No. That responsibility is yours. But don't wait too long. Some truths grow more painful with time." Catherine spent the weekend at home trying to decide what to do. She looked at photos of her mother, reread Richard's letters, weighed all the pros and cons. On Monday, she made a decision. She requested a private meeting with Richard. "Mr. Thompson, I need to talk to you about something important." "Of course, Jennifer. Actually, Amanda raised some concerns about inconsistencies in your documentation. Would you like to clarify them?" "That's exactly what I want to talk about." Catherine took a deep breath. "My name isn't Jennifer Miller. It's Catherine Wilson." Richard stopped writing and looked at her. "Wilson. I'm Emily Wilson's daughter." Richard's face lost all color. He stood up slowly, as if in a trance. You're my daughter." "I am." Richard leaned on the table, clearly shaken. "How long have you known?" 8 years, since I started working here." 8 years, he murmured. "You lied to me for 8 years." "Yes." "Why? Why didn't you tell me who you were?" Catherine felt tears streaming down her face. "Because I wanted to meet the man who abandoned my mother. I wanted to know if you had any remorse, any guilt." Richard sat down heavily in his chair. "And what did you find?" "I found the truth was more complicated than what my mother told me. I found your letters. I found out you tried to help. Your mother, how was she in her last years?" "Alone, sad, she never married. Spoke of you until her last day." Richard began to cry openly. "I looked for you. For years I searched. But your grandmother said you'd moved to another state. We were always here, just a few blocks from your house." My God, my God. Father and daughter sat in silence for long minutes, processing 3 decades of pain and misunderstandings. "Catherine, may I hug my daughter?" She nodded, and for the first time in 32 years, father and daughter embraced. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. The hug lasted several minutes, both crying tears they had held back for decades. When they finally pulled apart, Richard cupped Catherine's face in his hands. "You have your mother's eyes. I always knew there was something familiar about you. And apparently, I have your way with numbers." They laughed through their tears. "Catherine, I know I can't get back the lost years. I know I can't undo the pain I caused. But can I try to be a father now? I don't know how to do this. I don't know how we move forward after everything." "Neither do I, but we can learn together." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Amanda walked in without waiting for a response. "Richard, I need to talk to both of you." "Amanda, Catherine told me everything." "I figured. So what now?" Richard looked at the 2 most important women in his life. "Now we try to be a family somehow." "It won't be easy," Amanda said. "There are too many open wounds." "But it's possible," Catherine added. "If we all want it." Michael appeared at the door just then. "Can I come in? Mom told me everything." "Michael," Catherine began. "Hey sis," he said with a genuine smile. "I always wanted an older sister to give me advice." Michael's lightheartedness helped ease the tension. In the days that followed, the news spread through the company. Reactions ranged from shock to admiration for Catherine's professional dedication. Mrs. Peterson was one of the first to seek her out. "I always knew, my dear, from the very first day." "How?" "You have the same mannerisms as your father when he was young, the same determination, the same way of speaking, and those eyes, just like your mother's." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "It wasn't my place. But I was happy to see the 2 of you growing closer naturally, even without knowing the truth." The situation at the company gradually stabilized. Catherine chose to reveal her true identity to her closest colleagues, explaining that she had used a different name for personal reasons that were now resolved. The hardest part was navigating the conflicting emotions. Catherine still felt anger over the lost years, but also compassion for the man she now realized was more a victim of circumstance than a villain. During a late-night conversation at home, Richard shared more details about the past. "When I found out your mother was pregnant, I wanted to marry her right away. But my father threatened to disinherit me and ruin the family name if I married a girl from a lower social class." "And that mattered that much?" "To a 22-year-old who had never worked a day in his life? Yes, it did. I was cowardly and immature. I thought I could find a middle ground, support you financially until I figured something out. But my mother didn't want a middle ground. And she was right. Emily deserved a man who would choose her above all else. I wasn't that man back then. And if you could go back..." Richard didn't hesitate. "I'd choose your mother. I'd always choose her and you." These conversations were crucial for Catherine to truly begin forgiving, not out of obligation or social pressure, but from understanding that everyone was a product of their circumstances and choices. Amanda, too, faced her own inner battles. Learning that she had shared her husband with the memory of another love all those years was painful. But she also realized Richard had never been completely happy, and perhaps this revelation could finally bring peace to them all. "Catherine, can I ask you a personal question?" said Amanda during lunch. "Of course. Do you hate me?" "Why would I?" "For being married to your father. For having with him the family you should have had." Catherine thought carefully before answering. "At first, yes. But now I realize you were also a victim of the situation. Mr. Richard never told you about me and my mother, did he? Never. I knew there was something, but I never got the details. Then we're all victims of his secrets and choices. But now, we can choose how to move forward. This conversation marked the beginning of a more harmonious relationship between the two women. The bond between Catherine and Michael developed naturally. He was genuinely happy to have a sister and showed no resentment that she was older or had appeared out of nowhere. "Michael, doesn't it feel strange to you?" Catherine asked. "Why? Family is family. It doesn't matter how we got here. But I lied to you for years, and Dad lied to all of us for decades. If we start keeping score, we'll never move on." Michael's simple wisdom often surprised Catherine. Months passed, and the family dynamics adjusted. Catherine continued working at the company, but now openly as Richard's daughter. Some clients were confused by the name change, but the explanation that it was a documentation issue was accepted. The Single Mothers Support Program became one of the company's most successful projects. Catherine poured her personal passion into developing the initiative, and the results were impressive. At the support center's opening, Richard gave an emotional speech. "This project represents more than corporate responsibility. It's a chance to right past wrongs and ensure other families don't go through what mine did." Catherine watched from the audience as her father spoke with conviction about supporting single mothers. It was ironic and touching at once. After the event, father and daughter walked together through the company gardens. "Catherine, can I ask you something that's been weighing on me for months?" "Of course. All those years working with me, did you ever hate me?" Catherine considered carefully. "Yes, at first. But the hatred faded as I got to know you better. When I realized you were suffering too, carrying guilt and regret, it became hard to hold on to. And now I'm learning to love my father." Richard stopped walking and embraced his daughter. "That's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever said to me." A year after the revelation, the Thompson family had found a new balance. Catherine still lived in her apartment, but had dinner at her father's house twice a week. Michael included her in all family plans, and Amanda had become a kind, caring stepmother. During one gathering, Richard made an announcement. "I want to share something with you all. I'm considering semi-retirement and having Catherine take over as company president." "Dad, I don't know if I'm ready," Catherine said. "You've been preparing for 8 years without realizing it," Michael laughed. "You know the business better than anyone." "And I'll be here to help however needed," Richard added. The transition was gradual and smooth. Catherine took on more responsibilities, while Richard slowly stepped back from daily operations. During this time, they also worked through unresolved emotional matters. Catherine insisted they visit her mother's grave together. "I've never come here," Richard confessed before Emily's headstone. "Why?" "Fear. Shame. I didn't know what to say to her." "Say it now." Richard knelt at the grave and spoke through tears. "Emily, my love, forgive me. Forgive my cowardice, my immaturity. Our daughter has become an incredible woman, and I know it's thanks to you. Thank you for raising her so well, even without my help." Catherine cried alongside her father, finally feeling some old wounds healing. 2 years after the truth had been revealed, the family's life had completely stabilized. Catherine was officially the company's president, Michael had gotten married and was expecting his first child, and Richard enjoyed an active retirement, dividing his time between the company and social projects. The Single Mothers Support Program had expanded to other cities, helping hundreds of families. Catherine often visited the beneficiaries, reminded of her own story. During one of these visits, she met a 20-year-old woman raising a baby alone. The girl's story echoed that of her own mother. "How do you manage?" the young woman asked. "Sometimes it feels impossible." "One day at a time," Catherine replied, "and accepting help when it comes. Pride can be our worst enemy." "Do you have children?" "No, but I've learned it's never too late to have a family, even if it's different from what we imagined." These conversations always reminded Catherine of how much she had grown emotionally since deciding to reveal her identity. One Sunday afternoon, the whole family gathered to celebrate Michael's birthday. Catherine watched the scene, Richard playing with his grandson, Amanda organizing the gifts, Michael telling bad jokes. Mrs. Peterson, who had practically become part of the family, approached her. "How do you feel, my dear?" "Whole, Mrs. Peterson. For the first time in my life, I feel whole." Was this whole journey worth it? Catherine looked at her father, who was lifting his grandson into his arms, and smiled. Yes, every single day of these 8 years was worth it. As she watched her family, Catherine reflected on the choices that had brought her here. Deciding to lie about her identity had been risky and painful, but it had also been necessary for her own healing. She had learned that sometimes we must take winding paths to reach where we're meant to be. That forgiveness is a gradual process, not a single event, and that family can be built and rebuilt, no matter the mistakes of the past. Richard walked over to her with his grandson in his arms. "Catherine, would you like to hold your nephew?" She took the baby into her arms and felt a deep emotion. This child would grow up knowing his entire family, no secrets, no lies. "What are we naming him?" she asked. "Richard Emily Miller Thompson," Michael said, "in honor of the grandfather and grandmother he never met, but whose love made all of this possible." Catherine held the baby tighter, knowing he represented a new beginning for all of them. That night, after the party, Catherine was organizing the day's photos when she found an old picture of her mother. For the first time in years, she could look at the image without pain or anger. "Thank you, Mum," she whispered. "Thank you for teaching me to be strong. Now I can be strong and happy at the same time." She placed the photo beside a new one, taken that day, showing the whole family together, past and present, finally in harmony. At the office the following Monday, Catherine found a letter on her desk. It was from one of the mothers helped by the social program, thanking her for the chance to start over. "Mrs. Wilson, you don't know how much you've changed our lives. My son now has opportunities I never did. One day when he's older, I'll tell him there were angels in disguise in this world." Catherine smiled, remembering that her own journey had begun with pain, but was now bringing hope to others. Richard appeared at the office door. "Good morning, my dear. How was your weekend?" "Perfect, Dad. Simply perfect." They embraced, and Catherine realized this was the life she had been searching for all along. Not the life she had planned when she decided to infiltrate the company, but something far better, a true family built on honesty, forgiveness, and unconditional love. The 8-year journey of living as Jennifer Miller had come to an end. The life of Catherine Thompson was just beginning. The end. Now tell me what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave a heartfelt comment below. Do you believe Catherine made the right choice by revealing her true identity? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartfelt stories.